I think we can get started, Shireen, if there's anything on your side you'd like to start off with.
No, I want to welcome you and everyone to our session. We consider this a very important milestone that we have ASCM officially in Egypt. And we are very proud to be success partners for ASCM. And we hope everyone gets to learn more from you and know how to pursue their career and how to become a supply chain celebrity like you.
I think you've got way more followers than I do, Shireen. So I think you're on the A list and I'm on the B list.
We are together. We are one team. We are supply chain friends. So welcome everyone. Okay. And some people are asking like comprehensive summary about CLTD. If anyone expects anything, please write it here. So please start. If you can mention CLTD as well, please.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And I think there was a few questions on SCOR-P as well. So let's jump into it and absolutely, Shireen, thank you so much. Really quickly, as you said, if I'm already a celebrity, then maybe I don't need an introduction. But just to give you a little bit about myself, so I work with ASCM and I'm responsible for the relationships with partners in the Middle East and Africa. So Symbios-Consulting is a new partner of ours, the only partner actually within Egypt. But able to operate all around the Middle East as well. So my background is really in supply chain management, S&OP planning, demand planning, supply planning, inventory management, and all of those kinds of things, right? You could say it's a bit of a passion of mine. And I always look to, at the end of the day, the KPIs, the metrics, how are we performing in the supply chain? How do we show that that's better all the time, right? One of the pieces of supply chain management is skills development, right? And this is very important for us as professionals within the field, and obviously also with our colleagues as well, to ensure that we are adequately equipped with the knowledge and the skills to operate within this environment, right? So this is definitely one of the reasons why I moved into this field, working with ASCM. So we're going to be talking a little bit, really just an overview of ASCM and APICS. And I know many of you already do know APICS and ASCM, so we won't spend too much time on that. What I would like us to focus on, and this is a very interactive session, right? So it's going to be a little bit of information for you, but I also want to make sure that we get the right questions asked through this process too. The assumption is that many of you that are joining the session today would be familiar with or would be considering potentially doing an APICS certification of some kind. And that's probably one of the reasons why you'd be here. So you may have some more detailed questions that you may want to get answered through this process or through this webinar. So let's keep it as open as possible. I can see the chat is going, and that's great. And I will get to the questions as we go. And feel free to even ask your question directly. It'll be nice to hear you too. But we will be talking a little bit about the options available through ASCM and now with Symbios for skills development, and also just thinking about what is the right course for you. There are numerous courses available. There are other courses besides ASCM, right? And we really want to just make sure that you should do the right thing for what makes sense for you, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. We will, in this session, go into a bit more detail in CSCP and the CPIM course, but we can talk a little bit about CLTD as well. And then if we have a bit of time at the end, depending on the amount of questions, is we will then look at what benefits there are to the individual to actually pursue a certification. So there was an ASCM survey that was done, and the survey was the salary survey, right? So the work and salary survey, which was very interesting to see people who had done courses through ASCM or APICS, what was the result of those courses? What was the return on their investment, for example, right? And what changed in their working lives because of that? So this is really great to have a look at the end. And then we'll talk a little bit about supply chain resiliency at the very end and what we actually need to be prepared for. So just going back into the importance of being skilled and being prepared as individuals, in supply chain management. So let's work through really quickly the ASCM overview. So what is the vision of ASCM, right? The Association for Supply Chain Management. It's a better world through supply chain. So you may know the term APICS, right? So APICS still exists in its current form. APICS is really the brand that covers all of the certification and educational materials that ASCM offers. ASCM is a broader brand, right, or broader organization that surrounds APICS that also includes things like consulting type work and models, frameworks, and all of those kinds of things. Voice of record, right, which is thought leadership type of things. And that's the broader ASCM world. So ASCM is the global leader in supply chain organizational development, transformation, and innovation. It is the largest non-profit supply chain professional organization in the world. And there's a global network of partners, instructors, and thought leaders, right? So Symbios forms part of that global network that we have. We have over 100 partners all over the world. ASCM is unbiased. So the strength of having an ASCM backing you, and having, for example, Symbios working with ASCM is, that you're going to get something that's unbiased, right? There is nothing that is forcing ASCM to go in a certain direction, to put certain content in place. What we do when we work through our certification process is, it's called a job task analysis. So understanding what is needed out there and how we can support that with the right education or the right model. And that's how we go about putting these things together, right? So really aims to be completely unbiased. And that's non-profit, right? So this is going to help you really get that pure unbiased approach. So we were built on the foundation of 60 years of APICS history. As I mentioned, the APICS is the initial brand and the best-in-class credentials and the standards that exist within ASCM, right? So the SCOR standard, the digital capabilities model, the sustainability standards. These are all the standards that we have within our scope. And we do have training and benchmarks that have actually been used by 5,000 organizations so far worldwide, right? So really a huge amount of adoption in what we can offer. There's really 4 areas to the ASCM offering. It's talent development, right? And that's part of what we'll be talking about today, is what are the options within the talent development space. We also have the transformation piece, which is, for example, how do we use the SCOR model or the digital capabilities model to actually make an impact in real life in an organization? So that would be the transformation piece, which forms more part of the ASCM overview. We have sustainability. So we have the enterprise sustainability standards that we use. And we've actually taken a few organizations already through the journey of becoming certified as an ASCM enterprise certified organization, right? And then we have foundation work. So within this, kind of one of the newer things that we've done here is there was a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and that supported Global Health Supply Chain Initiative in Africa, right? So really interesting project that ASCM was heavily involved with over there. So these are, if we look at this from a body of knowledge perspective, this is really the basis of what makes up the body of knowledge within ASCM, right? And besides this is the actual courseware that we would get, for example, in a CSCP or CPIM. But at the base there, you can see one of the most prolific models that has been used in supply chain management over the last couple of years is definitely the SCOR standard, right? The SCOR model or the SCOR set of standards. So we have this now, the digital version of it. So before it used to be about 2 or 3 packs of books. So I have them over here in the background somewhere, but really a massive amount of information that was incorporated there. It's now all digital, which is really great. And by the way, freely available to anyone who would like to download it for the model itself, which is really fantastic. Then we have the digital capabilities model. So this is really looking at how the aspect of supply chain management can be digitally enabled. So how do we link these things to specific aspects within or nodes within the supply chain and understand the information linkages between those different nodes, right? So this is the DCM. We have ASCM Enterprise, which is the triple bottom line for sustainability. Sustainability is not just about the ecological aspect of things, right? So a lot of companies are doing great work and great initiatives when it comes to green things. So putting solar panels on the roof of the factory, for example. These are all fantastic initiatives, but we do need to understand that when we say sustainability, it actually includes also the ethical and the economic piece as well. So we need to remain a profitable organization, but also do the right thing ethically and be green at the same time, right? So we have to do a lot these days, right? So there's a lot of pressure on us. And then if you move one up, we see that some of the frameworks. So these are frameworks that exist surrounding SCOR. SCOR is much more developed than these 4 frameworks that are mentioned here. So we have the customer chain, we have design chain, product lifecycle, and we also have more of the supply chain segmentation piece as well with an M4SC. So these are interesting too to look at. And then we have various other things that we do too, right? So we have reference models for certifications, certificates, standards, benchmarks, and all kinds of assessments that we also do, right? So there's a lot happening in this space. So just from the alliances perspective, really, we want to enable sustainable success for our supply chain or ASCM supply chain alliances through the development of and delivery of our expanded and innovative solutions to meet the current and future needs of individuals, organizations, and communities that we serve. Okay, and the individuals piece is definitely going to be very applicable to you with regards to the courseware and the certifications that we'll talk about in a moment. So just to give you a view of the ecosystem that we operate within. So there's a lot of players and stakeholders surrounding ASCM, right? The one of the important ones definitely within the space is the global training partners. And this is where Symbios fits in, right? So Symbios delivers for us really the training capabilities and obviously the training in country, obviously for ASCM, right? So ASCM is US based, but through the global network, we can operate all around the world, right? So this is what we do. And we're very excited about the relationship with Symbios. I've actually worked directly with the team before. We've worked in a couple of projects together, which has been fantastic. And I do know and can say for absolutely sure that the capability and the level and quality that Symbios brings to the market is extremely high, right? And I've seen a lot of partners around the world. So I can definitely say that for an absolute fact. So if you're going to choose to go through Symbios to do any of your certifications, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a good choice, right? So this is really great. Okay, so let me just check in the chat if there were any questions before we go into this. Okay, so I can see there's a lot of questions about CLTD, and then there's some details on SCOR-P, when the program will start, the cost of the course, and then CLTD again as well. Okay, so let's go through this first, then we can talk a little bit about where all these different certifications fit. Okay, so these are the programs, learning programs that are offered through Symbios, right? Which is really the full spectrum that is offered through ASCM. We will talk a little bit about principles on demand in the future. So the principles on demand is actually being replaced by what's called fundamentals of supply chain management. And this you'll see in the next month or two, because it's a brand new launch, where we're offering different types of modules that you can actually do through this type of course. But let's start right at the top. So at the top, we have our CSCP, right? The Certified Supply Chain Professional. And when looking at the aspect within supply chain management that the CSCP focuses on, it's very broad. So it's a comprehensive course, right? Covering the areas of plan, source, make, deliver, return, and enable. So really every aspect of supply chain management from a much more holistic, relational type perspective. And you'll see when we get into a little bit more of the details of what the content covers, that it has this more understanding of supply chain from a overarching perspective, right? You're not learning how to do a calculation down to the detailed level, but you're really learning about what that calculation means, what the impact is and how to handle it and what to do about it, right? So it delivers actual results. And this is the reason why you see the salary adjustments for CSCP professionals, and also the ability to get hired, because this is a very well-renowned course to do. And we'll talk a little bit about the exam and what's included there. But absolutely, it's not an easy course. It definitely you need to study, and but this is really what makes it so good, right? It really is comprehensive and all-encompassing. So a very interesting course to do. Moving one down is the SCOR-P. So this is based on the SCOR model. So let's start with the SCOR model, right? So the SCOR model was developed as the supply chain operations reference model. That model is now being taught through what's called SCOR-P. So it is a professional endorsement, also a class that is done, and then an exam that you should do to get the endorsement, right? So it's a lifetime endorsement. Once you have it, it lasts forever. But also it's really important to understand the model. So what you are taught in this SCOR-P, SCOR Professional, is first of all what the model is, how the model works, and how the model takes the different elements. There's 4 different elements in the model, right? The process, practices, people, and performance in the supply chain, and how all those things are linked together. So the model really teaches you about how that all works, how the nomenclature works, what the processes mean, what all the steps exactly are. It also then teaches you how to implement SCOR. So we have what's called the racetrack. So that goes through the entire process of saying, okay, here's how we analyze the performance in our supply chain. This is what we're going to do when we look at what's called a disconnect analysis within the process. We'll do a defect analysis, which is about what the KPIs look like and what we think they should look like. So these are all the things that are incorporated into that course specifically. It's a really interesting and a great course to do, by the way. I mean, I would vouch for both CSCP or SCOR. For me, it's which one, they both have their merits for sure. Then we have principles on demand. So as I mentioned, this is going to be replaced by the fundamentals course. And what's nice about this is that there are, I think it's 42 modules, 42 modules that are then broken down into 6 segments. So you can take a specific segment of those. If you want to learn more about planning, you can do the courseware and the modules that focus on planning. If you want to learn more about deliver or logistics specifically within deliver or return, you can do specific courseware on that, right? So this is quite nice to pick and choose which one of those you think would be more applicable for you to learn about. Okay, so although it is very comprehensive and you can actually go into details with each one of these separately if you want to, this is actually the new fundamentals is going to be a certificate of completion. Right, so there isn't actually an exam specifically for this one, which technically makes it less stressful, but definitely it's at a very good price point as well. So this will come up. You'll see this in the next few months. Then let's talk a little bit about the CPIM and then get to CLTD. So if you look at the difference between the CPIM and the CLTD, you can see here that the Certified in Planning and Inventory Management really focuses on this part of the supply chain, right? The manufacturing, the operations, the planning, the supply, the demand of that supply, right? And exactly how to do that planning to optimize the efficiency of our inbound supply chain. Then if we look at the CLTD, this is the Certified in Logistics, Transportation and Logistics. Okay, so this is typically sort of if you think of traditional supply chain management or logistics, let's call it specifically, this is what that would cover, right? So how to optimize deliveries, how to optimize the planning for returns, how to enable that through systems and things like that. For example, warehousing deliveries and all those types of things. That's what's included within a CLTD. So they work nicely together, right? There's a lot of options around these in terms of where you sit in the supply chain, what your role or function is, or where you want your role or function to be. These would be the key areas that then you could choose and you could look at. Okay. Then we have the supply chain procurement certificate and a warehousing certificate as well. So these are new. And we actually have 2 more certificates that are coming out this year. One is going to be specifically on sustainability, which is going to be towards the end of the year. And we have another one that's coming out on integrated planning, right, which is towards the middle of this year. So those will just expand the reach of these. Why do we have certificates? Well, the reason is because it's more for, I'd say, beginners in supply chain management or people with low experience in that field so far, right? Or maybe at a lower level within the business, or even someone that's outside of supply chain that needs to know more about procurement, for example. So I'll give you an example of the procurement one, right? We had recently a case where it was actually in the academic field, but people that were studying law, right? And they were doing business law. And in business law, it's very important to also understand what is happening within the sourcing function in the organization, right? So they actually incorporated a procurement certificate, this exact one, into their course, which was very interesting to see. So these are the kind of uses that we've seen for this. But of course, if you have, 4 new graduates that are coming in and they're going to be doing procurement stuff in your organization, this would be a great, great option for them to take. So that's just a very, very quick overview of that. Okay, so let me have a look quickly at some of the specific questions. Okay, so I can see here, so Ali, you're asking, how can I know what kind of certification is most beneficial for my career? Yeah, that's a great question. So we'll talk a little bit about the details of the CPIM and the CSCP, but there is a lot of information that we can provide on this, right? So looking at what kind of functions you currently perform and what are the specific skills that you will gain out of knowing or out of gaining the certification. That's what we can provide for you, so you can have a look at that as well and see what's included there, right? So that'll definitely answer that question. And then I think so. Omar is asking, so scores for tactical level. In some ways, yes, operational, tactical, but also strategic if we look at the implementation of SCOR. So let me give you an example of this, Omar. So within SCOR, we have what's called attributes, which are performance attributes. So performance attribute is reliability of your supply chain. Within reliability, we have a metric called perfect order fulfillment. Within perfect order fulfillment, we have sub-metrics, right? So there's all these different kind of very specific and very operational and tactical parts of SCOR. But the question is, what do we want our supply chain to be, right? Do we want a reliable supply chain, or do we want it to be more cost effective? Because there's always going to be a trade-off. So these kind of questions are asked through the SCOR model. I would say the SCOR model is at a higher level for sure. It's how do you translate that more strategic thinking into practical terms? That's what the SCOR model does, right? So definitely it's very comprehensive, and I think that's the beauty of SCOR. And then I see a question from Shireen Mustafa. If I went through CPIM and got a certificate of attendance, why should I go through it again and get the test done? Well, let me ask you the question then for the exam is, can you pass the exam? So absolutely. There's, this is a kind of a question for just in general, if you're looking at courseware. What you want is the knowledge, right? So absolutely. If you believe you have the knowledge through going through the CPIM.
What grant? It depends. Where did you get the attendance certificate from? CPIM is exclusive to ASCM. It's not
right.
It belongs to anyone. So if you get a CPIM certificate without ASCM or APICS true logo, then it's not a certificate.
Absolutely, and I want to just echo what you're saying, Shireen. Is we have to be very careful with certificates of attendance, right? Anyone can go and listen to a 7-hour webinar, right, and then say, "Oh yeah, I know this, I can do this," but have you proven it through the exam, right? Or have you proven it through a reputable organization? And this is why ASCM exams are, not everyone passes it, right? The majority pass, right? I'm not trying to say it's like impossible to pass, because it isn't, but it's about that quality, right? And the quality of knowing that you've gone through a real process with the real materials and are really getting a quality education, right? Another thing I'll mention to you, Shireen, is if you have a CV, right, and you're trying to get a new job, okay, your certificate of attendance is not really worth much, right? A certificate of exam that I got the exam and I passed the exam is worth a huge amount more, right? Because that proves that you know that knowledge. So there's a very big difference between those things.
And it's an international exam. So if anyone wants to get the certificate, you need to do the exam, part 1 and part 2, to prove that you are qualified. So you're equivalent to someone who is in US or in Saudi or in Europe who passed, and he has the same certificate.
Exactly. 100%. So yes, absolutely, Shireen. So I would challenge you, if you've gone through that process, to do the exam for sure. Then Walid asked a question: is the model available for download on ASCM website? So this is fantastic. Glad you asked that, Walid. So we have the SCOR model, which is available, yes, for anyone to go in and to view, right? It's a really great model. I wish we had some time to go through it in detail, but that's not the purpose of today's call. But it is an incredible model. If you go into the SCOR model, you'll have to get an APICS ID. It's completely free. You just need to put your details in. And I see Zainab has put in the details to get there. So score.ascm.org, right, to go there. But looking through that model is going to give you a really good understanding of SCOR, right? And when you say model, I'm assuming you're talking about the SCOR model, but we also have the digital capabilities model, which is dcm.ascm.org, if you'd like to go and have a look at that too. So yes, they are available for you to see on the ASCM website. And this is new, right? This wasn't before done. So this is fantastic that people can now go and do this. You're not going to learn the SCOR-P, but you're going to definitely have access to the full model. And then let me just check out these other questions. So Shireen Mustafa, you ask, in this case, do you recommend to get the CPIM first or the CSCP? Okay, great question. Yes. And I think Shireen would have more questions on this about what is it that you want to do, what is your target, right? Your experience level, etc. And we'll talk a little bit about these two, the differences between these two in a moment too. So let's go through this, Shireen, and if your answer is not clear by the end of this, then we can come back to it and answer the question. Okay. And then you're also asking, what is the difference between registering with Symbios and buying the online package from ASCM website? Okay. So definitely, and jump in, yeah, Shireen, Shireen Musalam, if you want. But you get a self-study option going through the website, right? So if you want to, you can definitely do that. You are able to do a self-study. But what Symbios offers is a surrounding training experience, right, surrounding that. So this is going to be a lot more beneficial in most cases to actually go through this process of the training with Symbios, with an authorized trainer, and then go ahead and do the exam after that, right? So
by the way, we have no issue if someone wants our help to get them the materials and exam at discounted price. We are happy to pass the discount to you, even if you don't want to attend the course. So we are helping here. We are representative ASCM. We are official representative, so we get special prices and discounts, and we pass it to everyone. So if you don't want to attend the course, then all what you need our help is to help you to get the exam, get the materials. We are more than happy to do that.
Yes, absolutely, and this is a key thing. So you're definitely better off getting it from Symbios for sure. And I mean, I'm saying that from a completely unbiased perspective because I'm from ASCM, right? But definitely, because they can provide you with any follow-up support as well, and can even give you the course, as you said, Shireen, for probably a better price too. So this is really good. And then let me check the next question. So Omar, you're asking, my education is on law. Then I shift my career to logistics, and I'm working in order management in small scale. Do I have a chance to get a job in a big scale of logistics by getting a CLTD? Well, you have a much better chance, yes. So I'm actually going to answer that question with a yes, to be honest. I think having the course is extremely beneficial because it does show that you have the knowledge and you know, a much higher level of knowledge than you would have if you did not have a CLTD, for example, right? So definitely, and you mentioned logistics. So when you talk about logistics, if you're talking about core logistics like delivers and warehousing and all those types of things, then definitely the CLTD fits within that scope of what you'd probably want to explore. And then I see a question from Moataz. So, hello Grant, can we consider CSCP included? Can we consider CSCP included CPIM or cover the same areas in more details? Okay, so that's a good question. So your point is, if you were to do a CSCP, are you going to learn what's in the CPIM as well? So there is an overlap. There's definitely an overlap, but the CSCP is, in a way, teaching you like a way of thinking, right? And it's got a more strategic viewpoint, a more relational viewpoint across the entirety of supply chain management. So if you want to know about, and this is why, by the way, the requirements to get into a CSCP are far more than the requirements to get into a CPIM, because it's assuming you have certain knowledge already. This is really important, right? So we'll look through this on the page with the CSCP specifically, but you actually already have to have a degree. You have to already have experience, or you have to already have a CPIM or a CLTD in order for you to be eligible to actually even do the CSCP. And that's the reason why it's such a broad, and it's at the highest level here that we can see there, right? So yes, it covers a lot of that, but definitely it assumes you already know the basics, right? So that's very important too. And then Waleed, you're asking, may you please give some details about the full online mode of study? So I think you're asking about what perhaps there, Waleed, if I can maybe just make sure I understand your question. You're saying, how is it structured, right? Which I can definitely show you what it looks like for sure. So no problem at all. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, great. And then as a reliability engineer, so Mohammed is asking, as a reliability engineer, I am working on spare part management a lot. Is it worth it to go for a CPIM? Yeah, so fantastic point and question. And I think within spare part management, that falls squarely in the realm of CPIM. Because within spare parts, you're talking about how much inventory do I need to keep? How do you forecast the amount of spare parts that you need when you have a bill of materials, for example, looking at the requirements for certain products, right, that form part of those parts when you actually combine them together. So definitely it sounds like it's a far more better fit on the CPIM for sure, right? But absolutely, it depends where in the supply chain, but yes. Okay, and Ahmed says, please lower the price. Okay, so I guess we can talk about that a bit later for sure. Okay, so I'm going to move on really quickly if I can, and just go into some of the details of the CPIM and the CSCP. And please still ask any questions that you may have. So for both of these, you'll see there's a link there. And I know that I think Zainab and the team will send out a bit of information post this webinar, but you can actually go and do a free preview, right? So I actually downloaded this the other day. And you can actually go into the CPIM itself and the CSCP. You can do it with CLTD as well, and do a 30-day free, basically a free demo, right? You can go through some, you can look at it, you can see what's included in some of the courseware. It's really great. So I would definitely recommend that if you're on the fence of what you think about each of these, get access to all three. It's free. Go through it in detail and understand what's included there, and then go into the next step of taking the actual course and taking the exam, right? So this is a really, really nice way to make 100% sure that what's included in here is what you're looking for, okay? So the CPIM is the Certified in Planning and Inventory Management. Okay, it's not production and inventory management, which a lot of people make the mistake of. And really, it's kind of at the high level, it's talking about resilience and agility are really the key areas that make up supply chains. And becoming a CPIM certified professional shows that you can manage disruption in supply chain, you can manage demand variations, you can manage supply chain risk, inventory, and all those kinds of things. If you go for the CSCP, really it's about demonstrating the knowledge of essential technology, concepts, and strategies in today's extended supply chain, right? So you can see immediately the difference between those and what they focus on a little bit differently. I'm going to go into the question and answer, so we make sure we cover these. Okay, so Omar asked in the Q&A, for me, as I work at order management in operational level, what is the best choice? Is it a CLTD? So within order management at a more operational level, this is talking about deliveries, returns, customer-facing supply chain tasks, then a CLTD is definitely more in the realm of what you'd want to consider, right? If you want to expand your knowledge in that area. And Amira asked how to be an authorized trainer. Absolutely speak to Shireen and her team about this one, because there's definitely options available to become an authorized trainer, right? One of the things is to be certified, obviously, in the course that you're going to be training, right? And then also to go through a train the trainer course that we offer as ASCM, but this can be done through Symbios, right? So if this is something you'd like to pursue. And then someone called Purchasing Supervisor says, but mainly the certificate is given through attending at Symbios. May I get some details about the duration and the cost? So the certifications, yes, are mainly through Symbios. And by the way, the vast majority of people doing any of these certifications are going through a partner and not doing it on self-study, right? Some people do, but it's definitely recommended that you go through a partner like Symbios to do these things, right? And definitely they can provide the information on duration and cost. But we do have recommended class times, right, for each of these. So it's typically, but not necessarily only, typically about 40 to 50 hours of class times, right, that you would be attending. Either if it's usually to be spread over a number of weeks. And it could be virtual as well. So it could be either virtual or live. People do like going to live classes, of course. And thereafter, obviously, your time to study. And of course, the time that it would take then for you to study and to write the exam. So we actually have a long period of time that ASCM offers to write the exam. So once you finish with the classes and you get the exam credit, we have what's called an authorization to test. So this means that you can now go and book the exam. That you have 6 months to book the exam, right, online. So you can decide when you want to do it. And then you have another 6 months to actually do the exam. So you have a very long roadmap, a runway, right, that you can take for that. So I've hopefully answered semi the duration piece of this, and the cost piece will come to, I think, separately with Symbios too. Okay, and then let me go. Okay, so great. So in the chat, I see that Zainab has put in some information about the CPIM and the CSCP. Thanks for that, Zainab. Okay, great. Then let's quickly just go into the content. Okay, so I put them side by side so you can see really the difference between these two certifications. What exactly will you study in CPIM and in CSCP? So CPIM is actually broken into two parts because it's really extensive, right? So you can see there's 3 books, physical books sitting there at the CPIM and 2 books on the CSCP. What is included as well is there's the hard copy books, right, which you get as part of the course, but also online, all the materials are available online. And online, there's flashcards, there's little tests that you can do. There's, supporting documentation and videos and things like that as well online that you also get access to. So it's a lot of information that you have access to within both of these courses. Then, so just to talk about what you will study in the CPIM, it's 14 modules and it's these 2 parts, as I mentioned. So it's 2 different exams, right? And 2 sets of courseware if you go down this journey. The concepts and best practices you learn will help to elevate job performance, drive improvement in operations and planning, as we mentioned before, and of course, just have an overall positive impact on your company's bottom line. So what's included in part 1 is supply chain overview, demand management fundamentals, planning of supply, executing supply plan, inventory management, continuous improvement and quality. And then in part 2, we move into strategy, S&OP, sales and operations planning, specific module on demand, specific module on supply. So how to improve your demand or improve the supply situation, right? Talking about inventory, so demand, supply, and inventory, all those three things usually go together. Schedules, distribution, and then quality and continuous improvement and technology as well. All right, so definitely full spectrum that's covered over there.
So when we talk about CPIM part 1 and 2, so it's more for people who are new to supply chain, like 1 year, 3 years experience, who need to learn more about planning, the functions, what to do. What do you think?
I mean, definitely. I think the CPIM is a very practical way. Like if you're in middle management and you have a task or function in your organization, like I think there was a question about someone who's focused on a specific area of operations, then definitely the CPIM, right? It will help elevate you so drastically if you really understand the concepts, the calculations, exactly how these things work and how to improve them. So definitely, it's got a very practical component to it, Shireen, that I think helps a lot on like the day-to-day work that you do. You will see a direct correlation or direct impact if you do a CPIM.
Okay. So please continue.
The CSCP is a lot more strategic, right? And if we look at the details on the CSCP that you can see over here, this is the modules that are included in CSCP. So talking overview of supply chains, demand management, forecasting, global supply chain networks. We're talking about sourcing products and services, operations, inventory, forward and reverse logistics, the relationships within the supply chain, looking at supply chain risk, which is very topical at the moment, and then optimization, sustainability, and technology. So these are the kind of topics you see covered there. So I think to the earlier question about is there overlap, so you can definitely see that there is that overlap. CSCP just takes it to the next level, right? So you can definitely see that through these two comparisons over here. Okay, so let's see. My computer has just frozen, I think. So I'm going to see if there's a question under the chat. Okay, ASCM used to be known as APICS. Oh, okay, I see that was in Omar's question.
It's my answer, because someone is asking about ASCM certificates, because CPIM as the certificate and CSCP is more than how many years now? 30?
So ask that question again, Trina. It broke up for me a bit.
So CPIM has been in the market more than 35 years, right?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and double check that, but it's decades. Yes.
Yes,
and different versions of, so it hasn't stayed the same for 30 years. Let me just tell everyone that.
Yes, it was developed. The reference, yes, every course of supply chain management would refer to definition of supply chain by APICS or ASCM. Maybe the confusion here is that some people don't know that APICS is same as ASCM. Okay. Yeah,
exactly. And this is what I mentioned in the beginning. So APICS is just the brand. APICS, think of it like this. APICS is the brand for the education materials within ASCM, or the education part of ASCM, right? But it's the same thing, right? ASCM and APICS, you can think of it as exactly the same thing. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit about CSCP specifically. So, just to talk a little bit about how to decide whether you want to do these and what's going to be included there. So if you are or aspire to be involved in any of these activities, CSCP is the right thing for you, right? So if you're talking about supply chain strategy in your job, supply chain design, right? Thinking about, let's say you're responsible for the term for setting up a new supply chain in a new market for your organization, a CSCP is a good fit for you. If you are looking at how do you enable your supply chain with different technologies, CSCP is a good fit for you. Demand planning and management, right? These things always are important. Customer relationship management and supplier relationship management. Supply chain wide inventory management. So let's think about this from a network perspective. If you are the supply chain director or a high level, let's say supply chain manager, or you want to be there, this is a very good thing for you to know, right? How do we manage the overview of the entire supply chain? Reverse logistics is included, risk in supply chain, metrics as well, obviously always has to be included in some way. And then supply chain change management, best practices and improvement, and financial management as well, right? So relating all the metrics within the supply chain back into balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, for example, right? Really ensuring we understand that link into the organization and the impact of supply chain management within the organization. And these are the criteria to do a CSCP. So either you need to have 3 years of related business experience, you need to have a bachelor's degree in supply chain, or you must hold one of the other designations. So either have done another designation from ASCM, okay, to get into a CSCP. So the CSCP is right for you if you want to demonstrate mastery in supply chain management, looking at all the way from the supplier to the customer, and covers topics that are beyond the scope of just your organization. So looking at things like IT, customer relations, globalization, etc. This is things that are covered within CSCP2. And as you mentioned, it's a mastery of the supply chain, right? So really the pinnacle of what you could, hope to learn within supply chain management. We've actually just updated it about a month ago. So all the potential new thought leadership out there is now incorporated into this course. And then what can you do with the knowledge you'll gain? So I know it's a little bit small, but we'll send this out. But really, if you look at what these kind of outcomes are, and I'm just going to mention a few of them. Let's go look over here, for example, help to design a supply chain, right? So that's much more than just operational stuff. Optimize product design principles and techniques to get to market more efficiency, select the correct technologies, plan inventory requirements throughout the supply chain. So what does that mean? Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to execute on somebody else's plan. It means that you're going to decide how much inventory should I be keeping at these 7 nodes in the supply chain, right? And that's the job to determine. So these are the kind of things that you'll get out of this, right? But you can see it's very strategic, right, in its nature and in terms of what you actually can do with the knowledge that you get out of something like the CSCP. I know Mar asks, so must I be qualified in any one of the 3? Yes, it's an or. So either 3 years, a bachelor's degree, or having done another APICS designation, or all of them. If you have all of them, that'll be great too. But yes, either or.
But honestly, thank you for preparing this.
Shireen, I think you're on mute.
I would just say thank you for preparing this. It's helping a lot. It's really, it explains many things.
Great, no, good to hear that. So, and please keep your questions coming. So Mar, so any bachelor degree, yes. So you'd have to show. So basically, what you do is you put in a submission to ASCM, and you will receive back the information on that, right? So you'll put in your submission as it's a submission document that you'll send through to ASCM, and they'll say yes, correct, this is approved. It's typically anyone, yes, correct. Doesn't have to be within supply chain management. And then is it really that there are mistakes in CPIM material to support people learn it under supervision of expert, not self-study? Mohammed, you'll just have to, I think, maybe just repeat your question. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Is it really that there are mistakes in CPIM material to support people to learn it under supervision? Maybe just re-ask your question if you don't mind. I could just understand that one, Mohammed. And then I see a question from Waleed. Is the new procurement program made to compete head-to-head with the British Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply Offerings? You could look at it like that if you want. But definitely it's one of ASCM's, really the first focused procurement certificate that we've offered, right? And of course, the certificate programs are interesting to do because they're very specific and focused on certain things, right? And procurement and sourcing is an area that, it's got a lot of focus recently. So this is something we want to make sure we're providing an offering for in the market, right? So this is why we provided that. And then Mohammed Nasser, if you could just maybe rephrase your question. I'm not quite sure what you mean by when you say mistakes in CPIM material. But let's move on to the next one, just this information here on the CSCP. So just to close off on the CSCP, right? So how will you study? It's a comprehensive program providing the print and online reading materials, as I mentioned, practice tests, interactive tools, everything you need to be prepared for your exam, right? If you diligently do your studying and your preparation, you'll be absolutely fine for this exam. So really, what it does is there's three components to this, right? It's to assess, so determine your current knowledge and identify areas of improvement. So there's actually a pre-test that you can do online as well. Then based on your pre-test score, it will recommend the most efficient study plan for you and where it thinks you should be focusing on. And then you're going to study. Okay, so obviously there is available materials for you at all times online. You can also benefit from what's called a microlearning feature in the online system, which is focusing on smaller content segments, available one at a time. And if you go and do the actual the demo version, which we showed you the link for earlier, you can see exactly what we mean by microlearning there. There's also quizzes, knowledge tests, etc., that you can do, and learning activities, flashcards, etc., within the studying process. And there's practice exams too. So if you go through the practice exams, you'll be able to see the kind of questions, what the questions look like, and how it works. Okay. Common question we get is, what does the test look like? Right. So the exam is 150 questions. You get 3.5 hours to answer, and it's all multiple choice. Right. You'll actually receive your results pretty much immediately after you've completed it. So you don't have to wait for somebody to mark your test. You'll know pretty soon whether you've passed or failed. Right. So that's quite nice to see. Okay, let's talk about CPIM. So part 1 and part 2, right? So let's go through the same process with the CPIM. So if you are currently working or you aspire to be working in any of these activities here, so you're working on, let's say, an ERP system, either as an IT professional or system user, you are doing planning at any level within the supply chain, you're a member of the sales and operations planning team, you do master production scheduling, MRP, all these types of things, which you can see is sort of fitting within the planning, the manufacturing, the production, the sourcing, all these kinds of things, the procurement side, scheduling orders and schedules, etc. These are the kind of things that will be very helpful for you to know that you should be doing, that you would be doing if you're going to be doing the CPIM. So very lucky with this one, there's no bachelor's degree or international equivalent required. So you can, from where you are right now, you can go straight into a CPIM part 1 and then do a CPIM part 2 post that part 1. Okay, you have to do a part 1 first before you can do a part 2, right? And it's definitely the right thing for you if you want to demonstrate knowledge in increasing your organization's profitability, optimizing production, optimizing inventory, and anything within the 4 walls of the organization. The focus is on production, inventory, planning, supply, right? So this is where the focus is on this course. Of course, we know to do really to get the profitability of the organization higher. So this goes without saying. And then these are the things, or the skills, let's call it, that you'd be able to do with the knowledge you gain. So increasing the accuracy of inventory, improving the forecasting process or the forecast accuracy, the actual sales and operations planning process, ensuring that that is optimal. Let's look at a few. Working more productively with your company's ERP system, using the ERP effectively to get results, using the MRP effectively to get results, right? Managing the master production schedule, and looking at things like flows within inventory storage and handling, for example, which is really interesting too, and continuous improvement aspects and improvement projects within the supply chain. So yes, Shireen, Mustafa, I will definitely, we'll definitely see this, this will be sent out to you. So apologies that it's a bit small over here, but we'll definitely send this out to you. There's just a lot to talk about here. And then I see Mohammed is asking, so some people say that if I study CPIM material, okay, I think this is the part of the previous question, Mohammed. So some people say that if I study CPIM material alone and apply to exam, I will not succeed. It is necessary to learn from an expert. Is it true? Okay, so that's an excellent question. And there are people, go for it, Shireen.
Grant, it depends. If you are
Yeah.
a senior person and you have been working for years, you don't need a course. Let's be honest. It really depends. Okay.
So like if Shireen were to go do the CPIM now, she would not need someone to teach it to her.
No, I'm serious, because the materials is missing the practical and lots of practical examples and interaction. So people take the course to learn the practicality. It's not just to pass the exam. Okay.
Yes.
Because I receive this feedback from the markets that some people took some special courses to help them or learned some videos to answer the exams. And in reality, they don't know even how to build a sample model or a sample sheet for inventory, for example. So you need the practicality. That's what the course gives you. But if you are a practical person and you have been doing it for years, so the first one will be easy. The second one, you will need support.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shireen. That's absolutely true. Then the next question that I can see is from Moatez. I study CPIM since more than 10 years back as per the first edition of APICS materials, but I didn't take the exam at the time. Now 17 years experience in supply chain. I'm going to get CSCP. My question is, if I attend the CPIM exam to get certified, is it necessary or the CSCP now is sufficient? Well, I mean, this is also I think based on your experience, Moatez, and wherever you're sitting in the supply chain, if you are, let's say you're managing a supply chain, right, at the end-to-end level, then the CSCP is a better fit. If you are focused on production and inventory management, and that's something you want to be more focused on, then a CPIM. But from what you're saying here, probably the CSCP is sufficient, right? Shireen, I don't know if you'd have an additional comment to that, but that's what I read.
I support you because it depends on your scope. CPIM part 1 for you is meaningless. You need at least to get full CPIM or CSCP. It depends on your role in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So Moatez, I mean, if you could provide us with that information, that'll be helpful as well. But I think, yeah, as we've said, CSCP sounds right. And then Yara asks, does CPIM has an expiry date so that I will have to renew the certificate or do the exam again? Okay, so that's a fantastic question, and we'll talk about maintenance in a moment, Yara. So we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So what I want to quickly do, and I don't know if we're going to. Okay, we have lots of time. Sorry, I thought we were running out of time, but we're not. So, okay, so for CPIM, so let's quickly just finish this off so you can really understand and get the full picture here. So how will I study? It's also a comprehensive program. It's both print and online reading materials, right? And you can get these just online if you want to. It's got practice exams, interactive study tools, and everything you need to ensure that you're prepared for both of the exams. You can choose flexible study options that fit the schedule. You can do a self-study, as you know, or the instructor-led or instructor-supported study option as well, right? If you're in an organization where you have a big organization, right? A lot of organizations do this, where they will train a number of people within a CPIM or a CSCP, etc. So you could do really a corporate-based view of this, right? So Symbios also a great partner to do this, where they can provide a trainer and just your organization alone is going through this, through the studying and the courseware. And then assess, study, and practice. So there's again the pre-test to determine your current knowledge. And then what the system does is identify how you should study and where you would be looking at the best study plan, right? So what you should focus on more. And then studying according to, again, like with the CSCP, different options for your studying journey, micro-learning features, chapter quizzes, learning activities, flashcards, etc. So all these kinds of things are available online as well. And then practice exams. So definitely highly recommended for the practice exam too. Okay. So the exam is a CPIM Part 1 and Part 2 exams must be passed within 3 years of each other to earn the CPIM designation. So if you do your first CPIM this year, it's 2022 to 23, 24, 25. By 2025, you need to do your Part 2 to get the full CPIM designation, right? So some people take much quicker than that, right? So within a year, I mean, I'd say most people within a year, if they're doing both of these, would be doing both of them, right? So within 1 year. And then each exam consists of 150 questions, which must be answered within 3.5 hours. And again, you get your results immediately available, right? So you know whether you passed or failed within 5 minutes of actually finishing the exam. Okay. By the way, online.
At home, right? Online.
Yes. So you can, there's an online option available. So for the online, what we normally do with the testing is we use Pearson VUE. So Pearson VUE is the organization which has testing centers all around the world. And there's usually one within 30 minutes to 1 hour of where you live, right? In majority of big cities. And for example, in Cairo, there'll be plenty, right? But because of the COVID situation, obviously there's been an option to do online. For the online one, all these tests are invigilated, right? So they are not open book tests, and you have to study for them. So for this reason, there's normally a process that's followed for the online ones. You'll need to put a camera on you. You need to have like 2 cameras, for example, while you're doing the test, and someone will oversee the test while you're doing it. But the nice thing is that you can do it from home, right? Or anywhere you want. And really, it's a very flexible time for the test. So this is quite nice to do as well, right? So you can choose either or. You can either go in somewhere and do it on a computer of their computer, or you can do it from home. Okay, so, and then just to go, let me just quickly check. I think there's maybe one question. Okay, so Omar asked, so do I pre-test with ASCM, or is this outside of the modules? So there is a pre-test. So if you actually go into the demo version, so that with that link that I think Zainab has put in here. So if you go in and do a demo, so it's completely free. It's a 30-day trial. Go into that and you'll be able to do a pre-test within that, right? So that really just looks at what parts of the content are you very strong at, and which parts are you not that strong at, and it tries to really assess that. And then you said one of your challenges.
Do people get like access to learning management system of ASCM?
Yeah, so in actually, and this is again, if they go actually into the trial version, you'll be able to see exactly what that looks like. So it does look like an LMS, like a learning management system. So you've got your different modules. It's very clear and it's structured, right? And at the end of every module, you can see a little test. There's flashcards. There's all these kind of little steps that you can take. This is included in your price. So you have access to this for the duration of the time, including and after your exam as well, right? So you'll be able to have that information. It's really comprehensive, right? I'll definitely recommend doing the trial version to see exactly what you get within that LMS, but it's 100% included as well. And Omar, I think just a follow-on question you have is, one of my challenges for me is to join learning system is the language, especially because we have tough business English functions. Can you help us with that? Yeah, so this is, we get this question a lot, Omar. So definitely from a language perspective, what often the instructor-led courses are, this is why sometimes it's good to do the instructor course. Yes, the content is in English. And the exam is in English as well, right? So the majority of the world, and it's a North American based organization, of course, is happy with English, right? But if you do instruction in country instruction, so let's say you go with Symbios and you do instruction with them, they can do instruction in Arabic, right? Or in whatever language would be applicable for you. But this is definitely, I think, a benefit of doing the instruction in your language, because you can really get the concepts and understanding in your home language, right? So I hope that helps, at least to a small degree. And then are there pre-test questions not counted for quality purposes, as Project Management Institute does in its exams? I'm not sure, Walid, exactly what the Project Management Institute does in its exams, but the pre-test questions, but there is definitely sample exams, example exams that you can do before you go into the actual exam. So there's a lot of information available on that, right? So definitely, and you know, CPIM and CSCP, CLTD as well is very common. You know, you'll see a lot like study groups on them and things like that outside the scope even of Symbios and ASCM. But definitely you see this a lot of people trying to, figure out what's going to be in the exam. So, but yes, it's included there. So you will be able to see the exam test questions, pre-test questions there. Okay, so then to just talk about some of the other resources. So just for your information, these things can all be downloaded, and I can also just send these links through to Zainab, who can pass them on to you. But we do have an APICS exam handbook and testing policies, which will give you all the information you need to know about when you do the exam. What do you need to make sure you do? What is allowed? What is not allowed, etc. And then maintaining your APICS certification. So Yara, we had your question earlier. Looking at the maintenance, right? So basically, there's a book that will give you the maintenance. You don't have to do a test again. Okay, so that's good news. You never have to write another CSCP test or exam, but you have to achieve a 75-point maintenance target within every 3 years. And I've just put in here because I think these are questions that come up a lot, is what counts for me to get points, right? So, for example, you can see here, if you pass an APICS exam, you get 20 points per exam. So let's say you want to do your CSCP, your first CSCP, you're not going to get the 20 points for, but any other APICS certification exam pass, you get an additional 20 points. Completion of APICS certification learning system of 80% score or higher post-assessments, you get 30 points. Endorsement of exams passed, 10 points. So you can see here how you can actually get these points, right? And attending conferences, professional development meetings, webinars, etc., you can also actually get points too. So this is something we're discussing with Symbios at the moment, and definitely even if you attend some of the Symbios conferences and Symbios webinars, you'll also get points through that, right? So there is a process where you have to submit, what you did to get the points, and that will be assessed, and then you'll obviously go ahead and get the points. But every 3 years, you need to achieve the 75-point level to maintain your certification. So that's the requirement there. I hope that answers your question, Yara. I think it was Yara. Okay, and then there's another question. We need recommendation from your side to ASCM top management to make the exam fees allowed to take the exam many times in case of failed, not just once. So Moatez, so yes, so with the bundle, and this will be an option you'll see through Symbios as well, there is a free retake for free retake if you fail the exam once, but thereafter there is an additional fee. So I would just recommend that you don't fail more than once. That's my recommendation. Okay, so there you have it. Great. So I just want to conclude with these. So this is, these are the overviews for these topics. We can go into more details with these if you'd like, with anyone has an additional questions on them, for sure. But we just wanted to give you an overview of what are these about, right? The CPIM and the CSCP specifically. And I think you get a sense of the CLTD as well, right? Any specific questions on the CLTD that we haven't covered, we're more than happy to cover as well, and any questions that you may have on that. So let me check and just pause for a moment, to see, are there any questions on any of these certifications that we've covered today? Okay. Your question is, what is CLTD for, Omar? So let's go back. So here's the CLTD, right? So when we think of CLTD for deliver, return, and enable, part of the supply chain, the logistics outbound part of supply chain management. Is it for managerial level? I mean, yes, definitely. These courses are good courses and definitely high level. So if an entry level person starting in a company, yes, they can definitely do a CPIM or a CLTD. But if you're working in the area of deliver, return, and enable, then yes, I would definitely put it for managerial level as well. Upper managerial level, you're going to start to be looking at the CSCP. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so if there's any specific questions on those courses, I'm just gonna run through this and leave a little bit of time at the end. You're welcome, Omar. You're welcome. Leave a little bit of time at the end for us to answer any other additional questions that you might have, right? So just to go through, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we will send this out to you, but ASCM did do a salary survey in 2021, and there was various participants who were asked to respond. It was on the 27th of January 2021. And then there were supply chain professionals invited to participate via social media. The data was collected, and really it was about finding out information, about compensation, how much they earned, like what their additional earnings were post-certification, etc. So what I must mention is this was North America based, okay? So there may be differences in the rest of the world, but I think we can get the sense of, doing these types of certifications, what kind of results can you expect by doing them, at least even to a small degree. So there was 3,300 usable responses at the end of this whole survey. Okay, so just looking at who did this. So industry tenure, so looking at people in the supply chain field. So I'd say the majority of people that responded were about 10 to, I'd say 5 to 30. Okay, so it's quite a big, broad scope, but about 5 to 30 years experience in supply chain management. Okay, and we won't go into too much of the details of industry and level. So what did people say? Okay, this is just for your interest. So COVID-19 impact, nearly all the respondents in supply chain that responded to this actually remained in their jobs, right? And more than half of them had no financial impact at all. So this is very interesting. And I think it talks to the need for supply chain management in our world. We see all these like supply chain risks and crazy things happening and wars and COVID and stuff like that. But supply chain management always has its place, right? Which is generally quite positive, I think, for us. And then more work or need for upskilling in digital supply chain, leadership, and risk management. So these are the areas that are believed to be important for us to upskill ourselves. It's in digital, in leadership, and in the risk management component of supply chain. And nearly half of everyone in the survey is working from home. So, which is, definitely true, I think. It's probably more than that. Remember, these are North America based, right? So in APICS, certification pays off. So it's, in this case, it's the median salary of CPIM, a CSCP, or a CLTD professionals, $90,000 per year. This is 27% higher than those without a certification. So does having a CPIM guarantee you an additional salary increase? Maybe not, but the average is definitely higher, right? So this we can say for a fact in the North America study, this was definitely true. And then there's a positive outlook, right? So 60% of supply chain professionals found a job within 3 months of starting their search for a job. 41% of new college graduates found a job within 1 month out of college, and 88% of the respondents have a good positive outlook on their careers. And of course, would recommend supply chain as a rewarding professional career path to others. So there was someone who asked a question earlier about, or had a comment that they went from law into supply chain. So I can, you can see why, right? So yeah, okay. And then I just want to quickly go, because I actually want to talk about certifications. So this is really, so if we're specifically looking at certifications, supply chain professionals who hold just one certification report a median salary that's 16% higher than those who are not certified. And furthermore, each additional certification earned correlates with an additional increase in salary. So the number of certifications that people are getting correlates with higher average salaries, right? Which is interesting, of course, to say, look, maybe it's good to know a lot more. And then supply chain professionals who hold an APICS certified in production. And just to go back to this is certifications in general, right? So not just ASCM certifications. Then looking at supply chain professionals who hold an APICS certified in CPIM, a CSCP or a CLTD, have a median salary, as we mentioned earlier, of at 90,000, which is 27% higher than those without a certification. right? And you could just see by the numbers, right? And we know this is going to be different by country, but if we look at the comparative within each country, I can guarantee you we're going to see the same thing. The people that have these certifications are in a better place or better off than others who do not. Okay. So let's just go look at this one as well when we look at the supply chain degree. So when we compare respondents with a supply chain degree, those who hold an APICS certification report a median salary that's 20% higher than a supply chain degree undergraduate with no APICS certification. So this is with a degree and a APICS certification. So this is where you can see the difference between these. Okay. So let me answer some questions quickly. So Yara asked, is there a certificate for CPIM Part 1 and another one for Part 2? Or I have to pass the second one to take the certificate, and what's the consequences if I didn't maintain the points every 3 years? Okay, so let me unpack that quickly. So there's 2 exams for CPIM. So two separate courses. So a CPIM Part 1, which has the courseware that we looked at earlier, and a CPIM Part 2. Okay, so you can do the exam and actually get a CPIM Part 1, but you will only see the CPIM Part 1 on the certification. Doing a Part 2 will gain you the full CPIM, right? So you'd have to do that within 3 years of doing Part 1. You need to do Part 2 in order for it to be eligible, right? So this is important to do. Then we're talking about points every 3 years. Okay, so points is after that. So now to maintain it for the rest of your life, well, until you're 62, then you can actually, then it just maintains by itself, right? But maintaining it after that, you have to get the points every 3 years, right? But this is the same if you look at other industries. So if you look at things like in the accounting industry, for example, right? There's very similar kind of concepts where you have to maintain your knowledge and your involvement in the industry in order for you to maintain, you know, that certificate or that certification. If you don't do it, then yes, the certification will expire, right? So this definitely will happen. But it's easy to get that. I mean, and honestly, if you attend a couple of webinars, if you're attending some conferences and things like that, you can definitely make up that number. And then Ahmad asks, sorry for interrupted, what about salary survey in MENA area, specifically in Egypt, so you have positive results? Do you have positive results? Yeah. So as I mentioned, this is only North America, but we are looking at doing this for the next salary survey, is including the Middle East and North Africa and also Egypt. So we'd actually be able to take this into the country level, right? This is the data we have right now. But I think it's going to be so interesting to see this in a country-specific area. So we're actually working on this right now, right, to see how we can incorporate this next time. We do this every year, right? But how do we incorporate this next year and ensure that we get the, you know, enough respondents that we can validate the data and we can ensure that we can get that kind of information. I'm pretty sure we'll see a better scenario and a more positive results for certifications in Egypt as well, but we definitely would want to verify that with the data. So great question, Ahmad, and I think we'll be taking that forward for sure. Okay, so let me quickly go into this. So this is just an interesting piece of the puzzle that I'd like to share with you. So this is the breakdown of jobs based on SCOR, okay, because we like to use SCOR for most things, right? I like to use it at least. But when we think of the kind of jobs that form part of each of these areas within the supply chain, this is typically what we come up with, right? So if you think of plan, within the planning function, you've got a demand planning manager, an inventory manager, production planner. Within source, you have a buyer or commodity manager, procurement specialist, right? Make operations, plant manager, an industrial engineer. Deliver could be logistics coordinator, warehouse manager, etc. Same thing with return, and then enable business analyst, a consultant, IT manager, supply chain manager, right? So these are the kind of jobs you see. And then also we have a view of like career paths. So this demonstrates common career paths for supply chain professionals. So let's take one, for example. So what could, if you were, let's say you started off as a operations manager, right? You could then move into become a plant manager, right? Having that skill and knowledge. You could become a director of operations and then a vice president of operations, which would be an executive level in the organization. So these are kind of typical flows that you could look at, right? So interesting to see, you know, where are you now and what are the options and possibilities for you as a next step in your career? This is interesting. Okay, then let's just finish off. And I know Shireen and I know this slide quite well already, but just to talk a little bit about the other stuff as well. So, you know, we have the top 5 technical skills that are needed up there, but we also need to make sure we have the leadership skills, right? And this is something that is less teachable, but just as important as all the stuff that you will learn through doing a CPIM, CSCP, CLTD. So the ability to communicate effectively, right, throughout the supply chain, this is always very important. Collaboration with others, critical thinking, the ability to see the big picture for future planning, and being able to solve problems, because that's what we do in supply chain management, right? We solve problems, and that's really the skills that we have. So I'd actually like to end there. So we do have, and we'll send this out to you, a view of the supply chain resiliency. And this is what we'll send out to you in the deck, but I know a lot of you would have already seen this, and really it's slightly beyond the scope of this session. So let me check if there's any questions or anything else anyone would like to know for the remainder of the session. Happy to answer. Okay. All right, so Shireen and Zainab, I don't see any further questions here.
Yeah, everyone is we want to thank you for the quality of preparation. Okay, so thank you very much.
You're most welcome. And I think, Shireen, probably as a next step, I know that Symbios will be working on the pricing and the options available for people. So of course, when is the next CPIM? When is the next CSCP, etc.?
And we have Ramadan in April, so we need to start and launch everything in May, inshallah. Okay. Perfect.
So I'm sure that you know, the Symbios team will provide all of you with some information on exactly when those courses are, what's the price, how it works.
Anyone attending this webinar will be able to get extra discounts. So we are trying to help everyone, and the discount is not only by Symbios, it's by Symbios and ASCM as well.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that, you know, the Egyptian market really gets the benefit of these courses, right? So absolutely.
Unfortunately, today we had another devaluation of the Egyptian pound. So it makes everything worse. Okay.
Yeah. So let's, you know, I think once we get that, it'll be good for everyone to see that information and they take it from there. But yeah, thank you so much to the Symbios team. Thank you to everybody who attended today. Let's all keep in contact. Feel free to send anyone in the team a message. And this is, as I mentioned, it's this is a conversation that we're having today, right? So anyone who needs more information or wants to do it on this journey, please contact Symbios or even me directly, and I can put you in contact with them.
Okay. Thank you, Grant. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Grant. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.